please welcome Niara Isley. Good evening.
Hi, Mike. Thanks
Hi,
for having
how are
me.
you? Oh,
I'm
thank
good.
you so much for joining us. I'm really want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and sharing this story with me and my listeners, for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be here, and I hope we have a great time talking tonight.
Yeah, I think we will. I really do. This show, I mean, we cover a lot of strange occurrences, and this is one that I definitely have not really touched on too deeply, and really happy to get into it tonight. So, Niara, let's start with your books. Was it difficult writing them based on your experiences, and where can my listeners buy these books?
Well, I only have one book, and it's still in work. So it's not published yet. I'm still working on it, and it is very difficult to write. And just a little correction there on the name. The name is Niara.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that.
Iris. No, that's okay. That's okay. So anyway, it's Niara, and the book is called Facing the Shadow, Embracing the Light. And one of the things that's been so difficult about getting it done is the experience section was very, very hard to write because you had to go back and read my transcripts and listen to my tapes and essentially kind of relive all the trauma over again in order to write it effectively. So it has been very difficult to write, and I'm still working on it, but that pesky experience section is almost done, and everything else should go more smoothly. I'm hoping to have the book done by June.
Well, good. And I'll make sure that I get myself a copy of one of those books because I find your story fascinating. I've read plenty of your articles that you have out, and I've even gone over some of the interviews that you've done, and really fascinating story. And that's why I had you on tonight, because I think people need to know that, you know, this isn't just a story. This is real life.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I try to take a practical, feet-on-the-ground sort of approach to spirituality, as well as the more etheric kinds of things. I'm really interested in trying to help people understand a spirituality that really works for them in their everyday life, something they can really apply. So go ahead.
When did you realize this disturbing 3-month block of missing time? And what were your first thoughts on it all in the very beginning?
I think it was back in late 1993 or early 1994. I was talking with a friend of mine named Dirk, and we'd been having all kinds of discussions about UFOs and ETs and spirituality and different aspects of, you know, metaphysics, and he knew that I had been in the Air Force, but for some reason I kept kind of dodging away from the topic in our conversations, and he thought, well, that's weird because she's so open and talks so openly about every other aspect of her experience. And so he sat me down one afternoon and he says, tell me about your Air Force time from beginning to end. And I said, sure. And so I started telling him about everything, Lackland Air Force Base for boot camp, technical training school at Keesler Air Force Base. And then I got to my first duty station, which was Nellis Air Force Base, and suddenly I kind of got brought up short because I couldn't remember anything except really general memories. Like I could tell you where I worked and what I did, but I couldn't tell you any particulars about like people I worked with or what my workplace looked like. You know, things that normal people would remember about where they worked. And this, my memory seemed to drop off in January of 1980, and then it kind of picked up and got more normal again around March or April of 1980. So there was like 3 months there where I couldn't really remember what was up, and I also got a wave of nausea. When I realized I couldn't remember that time period, I got really scared and I felt sick to my stomach.
Now, alien abduction was probably the furthest thing from your mind in the very beginning, or was it?
Well, I don't know. It seems like it's kind of always been there. even as a kid, you know, kind of lurking in the background, because so many strange things happened to me as a kid that then kind of rattled around later in life. And my dad, interestingly enough, he never really mentioned UFOs to me, but he did hand me, when I was a teenager, Eric von Daniken's books, the Chariots of the Gods books. I think there were 3 of them. And he handed those to me. He says, I really think you need to read these. He was pretty insistent that I read those. And so I know he was looking into the subject, and I've come to believe now that he was an abductee as well, because it runs in families. And another thing I've noticed in my research is that a lot of people that are abducted or have experiences also have Native American blood, and I did get Cherokee from my father's side of the family.
Why do you suppose that is?
Well, I've come up with 2 reasons.
Okay.
One is a lot of Native Americans are located in remote areas out on reservations, and if there is any truth to the story that our military met with ETs and exchanged technology from the ETs, and then gave them permission to run a limited abduction program, they might have said, why don't you focus on the Native American population, because they're out in all these remote areas mostly anyway, and that way it could be done more covertly.
Yeah, and I've heard quite a bit about the government actually making that agreement. I always wondered about that. You know, boy, if we ever could get some proof on something like that.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that are researching it pretty carefully. And then the other idea is that maybe Native Americans just have superior genetics, and the ETs like them because our genetics are so good.
Yeah, and they seem more connected with the environment and so on, you know, a lot more than us who use computers and cell phones and all that every day.
Right.
So you had some strange dreams as a child. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. The first one was I was about 4 years old, and I woke up one night screaming, just screaming, because I was terrified. And I'm not a person who's prone to waking up in that kind of an emotional state. Never have been. And so I woke up screaming, which was very unusual for me. And the dream that I'd had that had scared me so badly was of my sister and 2 friends who I couldn't see who the friends were. I just knew she was with 2 friends. And they took me out of the house in the night, and then they left me alone under a street lamp, and just out on a dark street. And my sister says, wait here until I come back and get you. Well, I waited and waited and waited under this street lamp, and outside it was like surrealistic, and outside where the light was touching was pitch black, so the only place you could see was that little circle of light that the street lamp was making. Everything else was pitch black. I couldn't see into it. And I waited and waited and waited there, and she didn't come back. And finally I was so scared I just started screaming and then woke up. And it was pretty vivid. It's, you know, I'm 55 years old today, and it's still just as vivid for me. And so that was one of the memories I wanted, or one of the things I wanted to look at when I had my first hypnosis session, and that was with Bud Hopkins in 1994. And when we looked at it, it was an ET abduction, and I said something kind of striking when I was under hypnosis. I said, well, it's night, and I'm in my bedroom, and I'm supposed to be sleeping, but it's funny because it's nighttime, but the bedroom is full of light from the window. It's like as light as daytime. That was one of the things that I said under hypnosis. So definitely something was happening. And
yeah, because there's those dreams that are, you just know what, I mean, despite it being a dream kind of atmosphere, you just know that there was more to it than just a dream. Yeah. So you think you were, oh, go ahead.
Oh, there was another situation when I was 9 years old where I woke up with a pain behind my right ear, and this is really strange. I reached behind my right ear and there's a bump back there, and it's still there today. And I remember feeling the bump and immediately feeling like really scared. I thought, well, gosh, what's this bump? Do I have cancer or something? Am I going to die? And I was really scared about it. And then it was like suddenly the fear was gone, and I forgot all about the bump as if it had never been there. And then if I felt it again, I thought it was part of the natural bone. And it was like two memories kind of lived side by side for many years. This one of thinking it was just part of the natural bone, and then underneath there was something else. And then when I saw the movie Fire in the Sky, there was the face of an owl flashed on the screen for a minute, it seemed like. And when the face of the owl went on the screen, immediately the real memory of the pain and the fear about the bump came back. So that was another unusual situation.
Now, had you ever gotten it checked out to find out what it was, like maybe an implant or something along those lines?
No, I haven't. I'm not real comfortable with doctors, I guess, as many.
I don't blame you.
Are. So I might have Roger Lear take a look at it someday.
Yeah. So now, do you think you had some kind of contact as a child too, though?
Yeah.
So does this still go on? Do you still feel like this is something that's happening, or? Yeah,
well, I do feel like I'm still having contact, but with a different group of ETs now. There's many times when I'll be asleep. I'll be sleeping. I'll wake up in the morning at that magical 3 to 3:30 hour in the morning. That so many people wake up from a contact. And many nights now I see what I call light ships out the bedroom window as I'm laying down to go to sleep. I'll see them out there kind of flashing and blinking at me in different colors. Usually the colors are blue, violet, green, amber, and red. And I've taken pictures of them. And so they'll be out there flashing, and then every so often what will happen is I'll kind of jerk awake at 3 o'clock or 3:30, between 3 and 3:30 in the morning, and the window's right there, and the flashing light is still out there, only it seems closer and more intense. And what the impression that I get is that I was out there in the astral body and then came back to my body at that time of the morning, and the feeling of coming back into my body jerked me awake. That's the strongest impression that I get. So I do feel like something's happening, and I feel like when I am out there, I'm attending some kind of cosmic university and learning all kinds of things that kind of come out when I talk to people down here on Earth.
And with hypnosis, you can actually rewind it, per se, in your subconscious.
Yep, yeah.
That's some amazing stuff. Now, you say you gain deep insights into the workings of our world and the roles that different groups of extraterrestrials may be playing in it. Can you tell me just what that means?
Well, I'm sure your audience is familiar with the concept of reptilians, and I think a lot of people have an understanding of David Icke's view of reptilians.
As a matter of fact, we had Alfred Weber on not too long ago who also spoke of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's got a lot of good information there as well. So anyway, it seems like I'm not saying that all reptilians are bad, because for one thing, as a little kid, I was fascinated with dinosaurs. And there were the meat-eating raptor dinosaurs that were real bad, mean, eat you in a heartbeat. But there are also gentle plant eaters and some that took very tender care of their young. So there were all different kinds then, and I imagine that there are different kinds now. But there is, it seems to me, a reptilian group on this planet that has kind of infiltrated and, let's say, infected people, at least the people that are really in power on this planet now, with greed and a desire to control and kind of stay on top and keep everybody else down. And it's
I can't argue with you there.
Yeah, and that influence is really, it's become like a runaway train heading for a cliff. And it looks really insane to those of us that have minds to think with and watch this going on. And so those of us that see this is happening, it's like we're looking for a way to exit the train before it goes off the cliff. So that's one group of extraterrestrials. Then I believe there are other groups that are trying to get us to wake up as a human collective and take care of our environment and maybe bring political pressure to bear on these elite groups, to really make our will felt. And then I think that there are groups of ETs that I'll call celestials, kind of more angelic types.
Yes,
and
I've heard of them.
Yeah, it's a real interesting melting pot or crucible on Earth right now because 2012 is coming at us. Some people think it's doomsday. Some people think it's evolutionary leap forward in consciousness. Some people think we're going to transition into the fifth dimension. And I'm kind of on board with that idea, but I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure. And I just know that this is a really special time, and I feel it, and many other people who are sensitive psychically are feeling that this is a very special time. And I think it's attracted the attention of a lot of different extraterrestrial groups to kind of be here and watch what's going on and help us out. I tend to think that the problematic extraterrestrial groups, like certain groups of Greys and the reptilians, have already been here and caused a lot of grief and trouble and really meddled in our world in a way that has not really been a good thing. But I think the ETs that are watching over us now are of a very benevolent sort, and I think they're trying to help as best they can without directly interfering.
Okay, well, now bringing public awareness as to the reality of extraterrestrials, would you say a majority of the people take you serious on this, or do you get a lot of people who really question it deeply? And of course people are going to, in a sense, because unless something happens to you, and but I myself think outside the box, and I have no doubt that this goes on.
Well, as the joke goes, I always say I can't have a battle of wits with an unarmed person.
I like that.
So in that regard, the people that are contentious, with me about the ET phenomenon, I just tell them, if you have not looked at the data in a thorough way, we can't have an intelligent conversation about the subject. So I try to direct them to different resources, some of the best information out there. I have an email that I've put together that I send out to certain people, and I call it kind of a crash course in extraterrestrial reality. Mm-hmm. And it has some of the best YouTube videos and other things that people can watch, and I put how long it takes to watch each one so that they can take the time that they have in the moment to look. And once they've seen all that, then we can have an intelligent talk about it. But otherwise, if they haven't looked at the data, then there really can't be an intelligent conversation.
So, I myself, I tend to do that with any guest that I have on. I try to see everything that's out there, whether it be interviews or articles that are written, and I go over a great deal of it. Did on your subject this week, and again, I find it fascinating, and I really don't find any holes in it. I really believe what you're saying, and there's so many people who have talked about this happening to them, and everybody can't be lying.
That's right. And what point do I have to lie? People that come out with this information have so much more to lose than to gain by coming out.
Oh, sure.
I mean, I held back from this for years and years and years. I said this at the UFO Congress when I spoke there. I said, when these memories first came to light, I thought, well, what do I do with this now? If I start talking about it, the only job opportunity I'm going to have in front of me is speaking at UFO conferences, and I'll be damned if that's the way it's going to be, But now here I am, and the reason is that I tried to bury this stuff inside myself and not let it come out and screw things up with my friends and family, because nobody wants to believe the kind of horrible things that people are capable of doing to other people, such as what was done to me in the military. Nobody wants to believe that. I didn't want to believe it. And yet I had to feel the feelings. And I had the trauma rattling around in my body that I had to deal with for a decade before I could really start to heal from it, before I found somebody who could even hear me to talk with me and work with me to heal. This is really a tough road to walk. And I tried everything that I could do to build a life and a career that did not involve this phenomenon, and it just didn't work. And finally, when I went through the healing process with the person here in my town, finally at the end of, we worked together for about 2 or 3 years on and off, and finally she said, the last stage of healing is to confront your abuser. And with most of her clients, that's confronting a family member that might have abused them as children. But
right. Now, how do you do it? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. My case, it's doing interviews like this, speaking at the UFO Congress, and speaking publicly wherever I'm invited to do so, because that way I'm speaking my truth, I'm educating people about what does go on, and just to take it in a spiritual direction for a minute, for any individual to become self-realized or God-realized or to have their spiritual enlightenment, they've got to do their shadow work. Okay, you have to look deep into every part of yourself and really know yourself well to really be all that you can be, to really unfold into your full potential. And as we approach 2012, that same process is being asked of the entire human collective. So it's not just an individual thing anymore. All of humanity has to do its collective shadow work. And we can't pick and choose what we want to look at because the world outside of us is reflecting back to us the disowned parts of ourselves. When we disown our own anger, rage, the darker parts of ourselves, then they take on a life of their own in the shadow government. So the shadow government, to me, is a manifestation of our disowned shadow selves as a human collective. And until we look at it and really observe what's there and allow the contrast to show us where we really want to put our life and our energy, then we are going to continue to have this shadow government reflecting our disowned shadow nature back to us.
Now, I have heard much discussion on the shadow government, and I was always under the impression that it was another source, like a higher level of government that we don't hear about, that actually pulls a lot of the strings. Now, I was wondering, is that true? And does this really exist? And you had just said that it does. But is it more than just the sense that... Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I do believe that does exist. And there's different levels to look at it. You can look at it from a very 3D human level, like, here I am and here all we are, in society. And then we have all these elite, government people, corporate people deciding our destinies and deciding our fate. And we can get mad about that and so on and so forth. then you take it to that next level where maybe you look at it as a manifestation, like I said, of our own collective shadow nature, just kind of out there staring us back in the face. And it happened because we were complacent, because we didn't want to pay attention. Back in the 40s and 50s, we started being sold this idea of, well, we could, live in the suburbs, and we have all this cheap gas, so you can live in the suburbs and then commute to the city.
Right.
And so we sacrificed our farmlands outside the cities for these suburbias. And now the cost of gas has gone up, and we don't have the farmlands we used to have. We are really, really, really dependent on oil and gas and coal right now to move goods and provide services around the world. And what do they say? That in any city there's about 3 days' worth of food? If the trucks and the planes aren't continually moving that food to the places where people need it, because, the bottom falls out of the gasoline market, there's going to be a lot of people in a world of hurt.
I always found it crazy that this country depends on our enemies, really, to supply us with the energy that we need to keep going. And I always thought that was so dangerous. And
it is. It is.
Yeah. So where do you feel we're headed? Oh, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, that's all right. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, where do you feel we're headed as a species?
Well, I really think that we're headed towards an evolution in consciousness, kind of a leap forward in consciousness. And that's what I was going to say about all the things going on in the world right now. It's real easy to look and see all the things that are wrong, all the things that are scary, and so on and so forth. But the one thing about the shadow government that I'd like to say is they seem to have control of the media, as we all know, and they serve up fear for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the more people, people get afraid, and then they get desensitized to the fear that's served up on the media. And so then the shadow government has to do something more extreme to get people scared again. And every time they do something more extreme, they take another step out of the shadows and reveal who and what they really are. So it's kind of a progression of, well, we have to keep people afraid, because if they keep us afraid, then our DNA can't turn on and our consciousness can't expand. So that's the game here, is to keep us afraid so that we can't expand our consciousness.
Some feel that the 9/11 attacks were actually a great example of that.
Yep, and I think so too.
I've always thought so too. I mean, you look at some of those videos and you can see explosions in the bottom of the building and so on. I mean, I've seen a lot. I've really looked into it deeply, and you don't want to believe that this stuff happens, but it does.
No, yeah, I think it does. And so, but again, see, the American people were not quite dumbed down enough to swallow that as a terrorist attack. There's a lot of questions around 9/11. We need an independent commission to really study those questions and really ask, a lot of hard questions about what really did happen that day and what really went on. And like I said, the American people were not quite dumbed down enough to swallow that as completely as a terrorist attack, especially when Building 7 comes down and it didn't even get hit by a plane. And all these buildings are coming down just like a controlled demolition. I mean, most intelligent thinking people in this country know what a controlled demolition looks like.
I couldn't agree with you more. I really couldn't. And that's what I've seen. It looked just like everything was planned. The building fell straight down. And I would think that if it was a terrorist attack and the plane caused that, I wouldn't expect it to fall straight down like that. And they tried to give reasoning as to why that happened, but I guess you'd really have to be naive to believe everything that they try to feed you.
Yeah, Well, I think there's a website of various engineers that have pointed out the discrepancies, and there's all kinds of people questioning it. But what it is, that 9/11 event is one of those ways in which the shadow government stepped out and really revealed themselves by doing something really extreme. And they do that every periodic, like the H1N1 crisis, the swine flu. That's another thing. They kept, we have to have swine flu. Everybody might have to have mandatory vaccinations. They're really frightening a lot of people with this swine flu business. But enough people got wise and questioned and questioned and questioned, not just in the U.S. but around the world. Finally, it was revealed to be pretty much a hoax. Pretty much something that was trumped up in the media to look a particular way, and then it really wasn't.
It's just like this global warming thing, too. I mean, I'm not saying that the climate, it doesn't go through changes, but it's not caused by us. Yes, we could stop polluting. That would be nice for the air. But that's not what's causing this. It's the sun. I mean, the actual reports before they changed them.
Yeah, well, the whole game is smoke and mirrors. It's kind of like them throwing something out on the media and saying, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this. And when we're looking at that, we're not looking at something else that they're doing or planning. But again, they step out of the shadows a little bit more every time they want to amp up the fear, and then they reveal themselves more, and people get smarter and smarter and smarter and wake up more and more and more. So at a high cosmic level of looking at this, it could be that they're playing a role in the ascension of humanity, because the antics that they do, the more extreme they get, the more people get wise and the more people wake up. And this time in human history is about people waking up, really truly waking up and taking their power back. So the shadow government is doing a very good job of being extreme and revealing themselves more and more people see what they're doing and what they're up to, and more people wake up. And this is a good thing.
It really is a good thing. You're right, because it's time for people to wake up. Because if we don't, what we have today, we will not have tomorrow. And, we really need to do something and start being more aware about what's going on around us. Now, you tell me about your talent as a writer, an artist, and a body-centered life coach. Just what is that?
Okay. Well, body-centered life coach was something I was trying to learn and train myself to be. I got a certification in it when I was trying to run away from anything to do with UFOs and ETs. So I got my social work degree, I got the life coaching certification, and some other certifications, because I thought, well, I have to have a career, and I want a career where I'm helping people, because I care about people a lot. So I learned a tremendous amount. And the really good thing about the body-centered coaching certification is it taught me to pay attention to the signals that my body gives me. The body is a big sensory organ that feels all kinds of things. And because I learned to tune into my body in such detail, it's really helped me with the expansion of my own consciousness, because I can feel things like, I'm sure some of your listeners are familiar with the concept of spirit guides.
Absolutely.
I definitely have spirit guides, and because I'm really tuned into my body and what it's feeling at any given time, most of the time, I'll feel an incoming wave of energy or vibration from my spirit guides when they want to communicate something with me. And it's very subtle, but it's like a little wave of energy or vibration comes into me, like often from the left side for some reason. And I feel it, and it's just like the breeze stirring the hair on your skin on a summer's day. That's how it feels. And as soon as that vibration hits my body and I feel it there, it translates itself immediately to English in my mind, to English words, and whatever it is they want to communicate to me. And, you know, sometimes it's different things. And I also get kind of a telepathic or telepathic communication from my pets, which that doesn't come from the left. It kind of comes into the heart area. And as soon as I feel it in the heart area, then I know what they want. You know, my brain can translate the vibration to English in a second. And so this is one of the benefits of the body-centered coaching training, is having that sensitivity. And so body-centered coaching basically is helping people to stay present with what they're feeling and kind of coaching them through a process of feeling something so that they can gain a deeper understanding of what's going on inside themselves. And that can pertain to many issues that they're having in their life. You know, whether it's fear, anxiety, or wanting to create something better in life.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good stuff then. And you get a lot of people asking for this kind of help, right? I mean, and it does help them in a big way.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you're the founder of... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. So, yeah, it's good. Right now I'm putting a lot of my attention on the book right now, but, yeah, I do work with people from time to time.
Well, good, because I'm looking forward to reading it, to be honest with you.
Sure. Okay.
Now, let's talk about Durango Exopolitics for a moment. Now, you're the founder of that. Can you tell just what that is?
Yeah, well, first off, it's a blog that I created online, and I don't get a chance to update it as much as I'd like to, both because I'm writing the book and I have a back issue that makes sitting at the computer for long periods of time difficult. So I have to be up moving around and getting a lot of exercise. And but I do try to get to the blog when I can. It's called Durango Exopolitics at blogspot.com. And I just explore certain ideas there about extraterrestrials and contact. And I kind of allied myself with exopolitics because it seemed to me that exopolitics was asking some really interesting questions about contact. It seems like in traditional ufology, they're still trying to run around and prove all these different things according to empirical scientific method. And exopolitics says there's enough evidence, there's enough testimony, there's enough people that have come forward, so on and so forth, that we feel that we can move on to the next interesting batch of questions, which is how is our society, how is our Earth culture going to interface with an extraterrestrial civilization? What does that look like? What does that feel like? How can we participate in it? And I really like those questions because, for me, extraterrestrials are a reality. And I would kind of like to wean myself off the UFO word altogether and just call the things that I'm seeing extraterrestrial craft.
You know, I have, and I've talked about it on this show before, in my lifetime, I have actually witnessed 3 UFOs, or extraterrestrial craft, as you like to call them. And now I can't say who was driving them or what exactly they were. I can only say that they were definitely nothing I've ever seen before.
Right.
So I really do believe they exist. Since I've been a little kid, I've always believed. I mean, you look up in the sky and you see all those stars, and there's so many galaxies and such a wide, wide universe. We cannot be the only ones. And people like you really bring it out in the open that we're not the only ones. And, you know, I love it. I really do. I'm very interested.
Yeah, I think it's really important because kind of like I actually talked to somebody in a grocery store about this just this afternoon because she was saying that sometimes she can see ships in the sky, these flashing lights, but the person standing next to her can't see it. And I think that that's like in What the Bleep they gave this example of Magellan sailing his ships into a harbor in the New World, and yet the Indians that were watching him sail in, they couldn't see the ships. They couldn't see them at all. But the shaman of the tribe saw the ripples on the water that was caused by the ships. And he knew that something had to be making the water ripple like that. So he studied the water and looked until finally the ships came into view for him and he could see them. But the ships were so far outside his paradigm and his people's reality paradigm that they couldn't see those ships. The shaman had to work to be able to see them, and then finally when he was able to see them, he was able to point them out to his people. And it's very similar for a lot of people on Earth right now with ET craft. A lot of people, that it's outside their paradigm, they look up in the sky and they don't see anything, even if something is there. And it's because their mind is not wanting to accept that reality. It doesn't want to go outside the box that's been built for it. And I say built for it because, again, the powerful, the elite, the shadow government, whatever you want to call them, they have built a very carefully structured reality for us to dwell within. And they tell us what's so, and they set themselves up as the voices of authority. So a lot of people accept that, unfortunately, somewhat blindly. And then when something is even right in front of them, they don't see it.
I couldn't agree with you more. And that really brings us back to that being aware, the next level of consciousness, and really being aware of this type of thing. And I believe that too. I mean, if people just don't believe, I think that goes in the same realm, not to change the subject, but even with ghosts or spirits of such. I mean, if you really don't believe and you're really closed-minded to it, you're going to overlook it.
Mhm. Yeah.
So how much solid testimony and evidence do we actually have? And I think you answered this question earlier, but why is the mainstream media not talking about this?
Well, they're starting to talk about it more. We have Larry King Live. I just saw an article come into my inbox this morning about somewhere over in the UK, someone spoke up and thought that universities should be teaching classes on UFOs. And so things are opening up a little bit more. But as far as the testimony we have Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project, which presents, over 400 very credible witnesses who are ex-military or ex-government employees. And then since the Disclosure Project, more and more people have come forward. I was inspired to come forward after about 6 to 8 years of Bush-Cheney administration, and all the things that were going on there that were a threat to our constitutional rights. So, I mean, more and more is coming out all the time, and, high-profile public figures, not just some rancher that saw a bright flashing light that somebody could classify as swamp gas out in his back 40 acres of range.
Right.
So it's a lot of really highly credible people are coming forward. And in that crash course in UFO reality that I told you about earlier, I send people to the YouTube videos of some of these really high-profile, really credible government figures that are speaking out.
Yes, I actually have a video on my website. It's actually a YouTube video of the former defense minister of Canada, and he spoke out.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. Paul Hellyer.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry. Yeah, and
okay.
I found that's fascinating stuff right there. And I believe he's even criticizing the United States for keeping it a secret.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's unconstitutional.
It is.
That's the thing that I'd like people to really understand is that You know, people think, well, what do UFOs have to do with me? What do ETs have to do with me? They're not abducting me. It's not impacting my life at all. But the problem is UFO secrecy, or the secrecy that was created to contain the UFO phenomenon and keep it away from the public, it affects all of our lives. And if it didn't affect all of our lives in the very beginning, it's certainly affecting all of our lives now, because we're destroying our planet trying to dig up the last remaining oil, and then when we burn that oil, it's destroying our air. And we don't have to be doing this. We have other technology locked up in black projects that could change the face of this planet. Just imagine the financial relief that would be provided around the world if we had free energy devices.
But that's not part of the big plan. That's the problem.
Yeah. So UFO secrecy is affecting all of our lives. Make no mistake about it. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to educate people about, so that they realize that this is something that should be a concern of every person on this planet, not just UFO researchers.
You know, that's why I do this show, is because I don't have the greatest knowledge on all these subjects and these topics, but I try to bring on guests who do, and that's why I do it. I want to get the word out.
Yeah,
but
you're doing great public service.
Well, I appreciate that, and I couldn't do it without guests like yourself. I really couldn't. But I want to take a quick break here.
Sure.
And we're gonna take about a minute or two. And
well, I think they've been visiting for a long time. Like I mentioned earlier, my dad had me read Chariots of the Gods when I was young, and I think they became very interested in what we were doing here when we started exploding nuclear bombs. And I think the reason for that is, to my understanding, nuclear bombs, when they're detonated, cause a matter-antimatter reaction. They're splitting an atom, basically, releasing a ton of energy, and that energy has repercussions on the environment of the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like sending up a flare that got everybody's attention, and then they came over to Earth to see what the heck these Earth people were doing. And they've been monitoring it very closely. And they've also let us know that they can shut our nukes down if they wish to do so. I'm not sure how many guests you've had that talk about that, but that was discussed in the Disclosure Project as well by Robert Salas,
mm-hmm.
and I believe another individual as well. Talked about nuclear weapons being shut down by UFOs.
Now, is it believed that we're actually created by some of these extraterrestrials? And I want to go on with that and say, if so, it's possible for us to have God and extraterrestrial creators coexist, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I think you have to broaden your religious point of view in order to wrap your belief system around that. But yes, I don't think there's a conflict with that. You know, some people I'm sure would say yes, there is a conflict, but I don't believe that. One of the reasons why I think about that is one of the interesting things that I've looked at in all my different areas of research is the fact that Francis Crick, who won the Nobel Prize for decoding the DNA molecule, in his later studies, he himself concluded that we had 223 extra genes in our genetic makeup that did not come from the regular evolutionary process on this planet. The way he said it was they were inserted sideways into our genetic tree of life, so to speak. And
mm-hmm.
that 223 extra genes accounts for the 97% non-coding DNA that has been called junk DNA. And so where did that DNA come from? Francis Crick himself concluded it must have come from extraterrestrials. But like most scientists of his time, he felt that the distances between planets and star systems was so vast that if this genetic material did come from ETs, that it must have been put in a seed form on a spacecraft and sent here at regular speeds, not superluminal or faster than light speed.
Mm-hmm.
So he, like most of his contemporaries, didn't believe that extraterrestrials could travel faster than the speed of light or fold space or, somehow alter space-time to travel. And then that information was also looked at by Dr. Chang, who kind of corroborated the same findings. So we have these extra 223 genes that we can't account for in the regular evolutionary process, and most of the scientists who have studied that question now are looking at the fact that these genes came from extraterrestrials. Now, some people think that the reptilians engineered us to have these extra genes. I'm not sure that I buy that. I kind of tend to think that we had those way back in the very beginning, and that they gave us expanded abilities such as clairvoyance, clairaudience, our psychic senses, and then the reptilians may have come along and shut those abilities down. They may have done something to us genetically to make that DNA non-coding and remove the abilities that lie within that DNA from us. So the way I look at it, this is just my feelings about it, but it seems to me that because we don't have those expanded abilities anymore, or we are unaware of them, or just not tuned into them, it's kind of like being struck blind, deaf, and dumb, because we navigate through this life with our 5 physical senses, and we have a whole other range of senses that many people are starting to pick up on more now. I know that I certainly am. That if we were navigating through life with not 5 physical senses, but the 6th sense, a psychic sense, or a 7th sense of expanded abilities, we would be able to see through the shadow government and the information they're putting out on the media lightning quick, because we'd feel the energy of it, and we'd feel whether it was true or false. We could see through things because we'd know it by its vibration, we'd know it by its energy. And I believe those are the abilities that are turning back on in humanity as we move through our fear, as we get to a point where we cannot absorb any more fear because our adrenals and our body are exhausted from all the fear that's dished up. People are setting aside their fear, and when they set aside their fear, and I know this personally very well, when you set aside your fear, then your consciousness is free to turn on and expand. And then it activates that extra genetic material.
See, I think just as we're able to clone people and alter plants and animals and things like that and actually recreate them to our likings, I think that it's, with that technology being a fact here on our planet, I don't know how anybody can overlook the possibility that somebody had the same idea somewhere else, and that's how we got here.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that very strongly. That we were seeded here, and that our evolution has been guided at various stages to make us who we are today.
Yeah, I agree, and we don't use the full, we don't use our minds to their full capacity. And that's a fact, too. And can you imagine what the human being can do, or what the human mind can do if we used it to its full potential?
Yeah, it would be really amazing what we could do.
But
I think that's coming. I think that's coming for us.
See, I've always been under the believer at 2012. I think if anything really is going to happen, I agree with you that it's going to be somewhat of a spiritual awakening, maybe a new sense of consciousness. And I also always thought that the Earth is pretty much alive, just like we are. and she tends to get rid of disease and infection that is hurting her. And I think that there's going to be some big earth changes. I don't think it's going to be where people are extinct off the planet, no, but I think there are going to be some really big changes.
Yeah, I think there already are being some big changes. You know, we're having quite a few earthquakes around the world right now. I heard the earthquake in Chile actually shifted the Earth on its axis a bit.
Yes,
so
yes,
we're in the midst of Earth changes right now. And when there is a tragedy that occurs, like in Chile or in Haiti, it seems to activate people's hearts, because there's this outpouring of compassion and help, and people just start giving to help alleviate the trauma that has happened in that country. So much as I don't like to see anyone harmed or, have anybody go through a devastating earthquake or a volcanic eruption, it does seem to activate the hearts of the rest of the people around the world. And this is also a really good thing.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And, there has been, I've taken notice, there has been quite a few earthquakes, quite a few catastrophes weather-wise. I mean, and it's just the beginning. I think there's going to be much more to come. And I've had a couple guests on in the past who have spoken extensively about you're going to see earthquakes and weather phenomena in the news nearly every day. And wow, if we haven't.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. Now, in one of your... Oh, go ahead.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
I was going to say, now, in one of your articles, you say these ETs could reshape our planet and society in ways many of us have dreamed of. So my question is, then why the abductions? Now, did you mention that earlier, that that's a different race of extraterrestrials that are involved in that, or is it several races?
Well, having spent a lot of time with researchers like Mary Rodwell, a lot of time with her material, a lot of time with the material of Barbara Lamb, and other, abduction researchers, it seems real clear that there are several different groups of grays, and some are more negative and some are more positive. There are other ETs that are interacting with humanity. There's something called the Galactic Federation, which I think is an alliance of a lot of different extraterrestrial species, and these are some of the ones that are kind of looking over Earth right now and trying to figure out how they can help without interfering. And so then, sorry, I had kind of a phone call beep in here.
Oh, it's okay.
But it'll go to message. Anyway, there are so many different groups that are out there that are interacting. To just say that it's gray aliens doing whatever isn't really accurate. And to call all grays bad because they abduct people and do things to them isn't really accurate either, because some of them are good. Jim Sparks, I don't know if you've had him on your show. But
no, I haven't.
He went through all kinds of different things, and he has pretty much full recollection of what he went through. And some of it was uncomfortable and everything else like that, but now he realizes that they're trying to watch out for the planet, and they're trying to inspire people to do good things for the planet. It's worth mentioning here that as a teenager, I figured out very quickly, it was like I could foresee what was going to happen in the years we're living through now. Because as a teenager, I thought, this thing with oil, pretty soon, as time goes on, we're going to be digging up all of our special places on the planet looking for this oil and make the planet not worth living on. And we're at real risk of doing that right now. And so, again, our society, our world right now is a crucible, putting so much pressure on all the different systems, all the different cultures, on people individually, on people collectively. and it's putting pressure on us to change. And it's really up to people if they want to choose positive change or negative change. And I'm hoping that they'll be inspired to choose positive change.
I hope so too. Our government is definitely not positive change right now. You know, there's a lot of things that they're doing that leads me to believe that, you know, going back to that big agenda and that secret government, or shadow government rather, I hear you.
Yeah, one of the ways in which my guides speak to me is in images. And one of the images I get very frequently is the image of a big dam holding back a river. And that dam is secrecy. Let's just label that dam secrecy. And over the years, it's cracked a little bit here and it's cracked a little bit there. And the people that want to keep that dam in place, i.e. the shadow government, they go and patch those cracks. You know, they patch this one here, which maybe they did away with someone to keep the secret safe there, and then they patch another crack over here. The problem is now is with the Disclosure Project and all the other witnesses coming forward, all the researchers who are looking at extraterrestrial experiences that people are having, abductions and contacts, this dam of secrecy is filled with cracks now. It's filled with them. And the people with the most to lose, who are most afraid of the secrets getting out because then their criminal behavior is going to be completely exposed, they're still frantically running around trying to patch the cracks as best they can without drawing too much attention to themselves. The smart people are looking at this dam and they're thinking that thing is going to go. And the smart people are kind of backing away and standing back because they know that that dam of secrecy is going to break and all that water of truth is going to rush through. So that's the image that I'm getting for the particular point that we're at in our society right now. I just feel like the dam of secrecy is breaking. The smart people in government are going to stand back and get out of the way, and the other ones are still desperately trying to keep the secret so they don't have to face the music of their criminal behavior.
I couldn't agree with you more. Can we talk a moment about Area 51? Can you tell me what's really going on there? I've been so curious about Area 51, and I know that you know some about it, so yeah, what's going on there?
Okay. Well, for one thing, I'd like to kind of dispel some misnomers and misinformation about Area 51. Okay. There's some people that they go around that area and they go up to the gate of the Nevada test site and get their picture taken, and then they say, here's my picture take. I was taken outside the gate of Area 51. And that's not really precisely true. They're having their picture taken outside the gate to the Nevada test site. Area 51 lies well within the boundaries of the Nevada test site. And it's only one of many areas out there with a numerological designation. So there's all kinds of areas, 32, 25, 34, 52. There's all kinds of different areas out there within that area known as the Nevada test site. Then there are adjacent areas that also belong to the government, such as the Nellis Bombing and Gunnery Range. And on older Rand McNally maps, you can actually see this. And then there was the radar range, which was part of the Bombing and Gunnery Range, I believe. So that's kind of the anatomy of the Nevada test site. And as far as Area 51, I never say anything that I know anything about anything if I don't. And when I looked at my experiences under hypnosis, I cannot say for absolute certain that I was taken to Area 51. But I can say that the place that I was taken was out in the middle of the Nevada desert, and it was a large enough and sophisticated enough facility that I don't know any other facility out there other than Area 51 that would have had that level of sophistication. So that's what I probably can say about Area 51, and then I could also tell people the kinds of things that happened to me there, which were not fun.
Okay.
But, you know, if you want to hear that story, I can tell it again.
Absolutely. If you're willing to talk about it, I'd be more than happy to listen.
Okay. Well, I'm going to warn you now that once the book is done, I'm just going to tell people to read the book.
Okay.
So I don't have to tell this story anymore, because it's really not a very fun story to tell. But when I looked under hypnosis, this is what I remembered. I remembered standing out on the deck of the radar van and looking up in the sky, and there were saucers up there, quite a few. I keep thinking it was somewhere between 9 and 15, but I wasn't sure of the number because I was paying most attention to the one that was closest to us. Mm-hmm. And it was glowing orange on the bottom, and it was making a sound that was kind of like the low hum and static of speakers at a rock concert when the speakers are on, but there's no music coming through. I was on a crew of people at the radar site where we were forbidden to speak to each other beyond what was necessary to run the radar. And we had been given fatigues to wear with no rank insignia and no name tags. So I was watching these saucers in the sky, and I was really scared because what I was seeing was obviously much more highly classified than I was cleared to be seen. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is because they were going to be doing things to me to make me not remember. From that scene on the deck of the radar van, we were put on a bus, and we were taken to what I believe was Area 51. I didn't see the signs because the bus windows were painted over. So we went to this facility. It was a medical facility, and we were sat down in a waiting room in which the lights were turned off. From there, one by one, we were called into a little adjacent room to the waiting room, and when it was my turn to go in there, I was told to lay down fully clothed on a stainless steel examining table. Mm-hmm. There was a security guard in the room with a sidearm. I laid there very terrified for I have no idea how long. Finally, a man in a white lab coat came in, walked past the security guard up around the right side of the table, and he injected me in the side of the neck with a hypodermic needle. At that point, I stopped looking at that experience in the hypnosis session with Bud Hopkins, but I did pick it up later on when I had more hypnosis with Gloria Hawker. And what happened after the injection was I was drugged down a very long flight of stairs. At the bottom of the stairs was a little room, like an observation room. I was thrown in there, and the door locked behind me, and there was a one-way glass, and I went through the effects of the injection in that room, and I believe people were watching through that one-way glass.
Okay.
And, go ahead.
Oh, no, saying okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it was, I don't know how long I went through that. It was very, very traumatic. I kind of lay curled up in a ball on the floor and screamed while I went through the effects of that. There was a terrible shaking in my body when I went through the effects of it. Mm-hmm. And then as the effects were subsiding, I was laying there on the floor. I had stopped screaming, and I was still trembling. And at that point, I was dragged out of the room and and I was sexually assaulted by 2 security guards.
And did you mention there was a gray present actually during this that watched?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a gray watching, and there was he was one of 8 people there watching. 1 gray and 7 other men watching. And not easy stuff to talk about, not easy stuff to write about, let me tell you.
I absolutely understand, and you could take your time on it. We're in no hurry here.
Well, I'll share something else here with you. When I went through the transcripts and listened to the tapes and got through the writing of that area, that section of my book, I had to go lay down for a while because I just needed to shake for a while. It's not easy. It still isn't easy. I don't know if it will ever be easy to go back and look at all that. But I didn't want to be, in my body with what was happening to me. So I basically memorized the sofa that it happened on in pretty explicit detail. Then after the hypnosis, I started having flashbacks of other kinds of things, interrogation-style debriefing, where there was a lot of verbal yelling at me and threatening me. Another flashback was of being hit with an electric shock, like a cattle prod in the neck and shoulder area. And then another flashback has been that someone put their hands around my throat and very slowly squeezed until I couldn't breathe, and then they'd let go just before I lost consciousness, and then do it all over again. So, and this was, I guess this is why I just feel that if our government is capable, if human beings are capable of doing that to other human beings, what on earth do we really have to fear from contact with extraterrestrials?
I don't think that there's anything to fear. I think, to that extent, of course, nobody wants to go through what you had gone through either.
No. I just feel like if people are capable of doing that to other people, I tend to think that, because I have the balance of my experiences in the military and then the experiences I had with ETs themselves, I had the Greys abducted me, and they did many things that were very uncomfortable to me. And some of it was painful, and some of it was downright so strange that, you have a little trouble coping with it. But none of it was ever premeditated or aggressive or mean-spirited or terrifying in the sense that the military experiences that were done by my own people, by other human beings. It was like premeditatedly evil, what was done to me by human beings. The Greys, at the worst things they ever did to me, it was never like that. It was scientific. It was this detached curiosity, but it was never mean-spirited. It was never malicious. There was never a malintent. I can't say that about the military experiences. The military experiences, I'm quite certain that they employ sociopaths who enjoy inflicting pain to do some of the things that are done.
Okay. Now, do others share these same experiences? Have you talked with others who have actually gone through the horrible things that you went through?
Yeah. My co-speaker at the UFO Congress, Melinda Leslie, went through some very terrible experiences herself at the hands of the military, or what she terms covert ops. abduction experiences.
Okay. So let's move on. And this Memory Syndrome Foundation, or False Memory Syndrome Foundation. Now, what exactly is that?
Well, that's something that the CIA cooked up. It's one of the organizations that's trying to plug the cracks in the dam I was telling you about,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. False memory syndrome is something that people came up with, and there is a lot of CIA involvement with the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. So I'll let you and your listeners put those dots together. But basically they say that hypnotherapists, if they choose, can implant memories in someone, or, convince them that, that something happened that didn't happen, or whatever. But once upon a time, hypnosis testimony was accepted in a court of law. Once upon a time. And then all that changed. And I think the reason for that is as people started working with abductions, extraterrestrial abductions, since they really wanted to keep the lid on the fact that people were being abducted, and possibly really needing to keep the lid on that because someone in our military or government agreed that abductions could go on in exchange for the technology, which we talked about at the beginning of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Then maybe they needed a false memory syndrome diagnosis to discredit people who are having memories of abduction, or to discredit people who have memories of military abductions or covert op abductions. If people start believing the information that comes out under hypnosis, then it's going to point some serious fingers at what's going on in our government. But it's not only hypnosis that's coming out with this. It's coming out in other areas too. I mean, there were, under the Freedom of Information Act, I believe, over 18,000 pages of information about mind control projects was released to the public. And so it's not just people coming forward with memories from hypnosis. And there's another energetic component to that as well. From what I understand from my spiritual studies and the scientific studies that relate to that, people, they have an energy field or an aura all around them. And even if your biology, such as your brain cells and your neurons in your brain, are tampered with somehow, either chemically or electronically, you still carry all of your memories in your human energy field. Mm-hmm. And hypnosis helps you tap into that memory field that's around your body and regain the memory that way. So even if the biology, even if the actual cells of your body or your brain are tampered with, I do believe the information is still there and can be accessed from the human energy field, which stores the memories of everything that happens to us.
That's like if somebody, maybe a bad way to put it, but somebody who's lost a leg and they still feel their leg there.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because the energy is still there, yes. Mm-hmm. So that's, I think that, I agree with you that we're getting to a point where I think, the secret's not going to be able to be held much longer. And I think there's just a lot of people are aware that there is something going on, and there's those few that just don't want to believe it. And I think eventually they're not going to be able to deny it. Now, the government probably wouldn't want nobody talking about these type of things. So I guess I want to ask is, in what ways, if any, have they tried to discredit you on this subject?
Well, I think because I waited so long to come forward, there hasn't been a lot of stuff happening to me about discrediting. In the earlier years, 1994 was when I had the first hypnosis session, and in the ensuing years, I would hear a lot of strange noises on my telephone from time to time. I kind of feel like, you know, I'm not living the most private of life where surveillance is concerned, but I have to go on living my life.
And do you recall at any time them putting any kind, I know we talked a little bit about this earlier, but maybe the extraterrestrials putting some kind of tracking devices or things of that nature in any parts of your body? Do you recall stuff like that?
Yeah, I do. There's the bump behind my right ear. There is likely something in the back, inside the back of my skull, because I hear this ringing tone all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's not a bad thing. It's actually pretty soothing. And if I really listen deeply to it, I can get into a pretty deep state of meditation pretty quickly, so I don't really see it as a bad thing. I startled awake early one morning from a very vivid dream. Let's say it was, you know, probably wasn't a dream, of some kind of implant being inserted under the skin over the sacrum at the base of the spine. Mm-hmm. And so I believe there's something down there at the base of the spine. But, so yeah, I do believe that there are implants. I think that some of the implants are higher dimensional in nature. And I just had another hypnosis session with Mary Rodwell at the UFO Congress. And one of the things that came out of that was the fact that I have implants in me that when I astrally travel out to the ships, I step into a chamber, kind of a resonance chamber, and inside that chamber there are resonance waves that go through me, and then the implants give off a certain data and information on the ship. So that was a real interesting look at some of my more positive ET experience.
Have you been afraid to actually find out for sure what could be in there? Have you been hesitant for that reason? 'Cause you might just not
I'm not really afraid to find out. I just want to go find out with a medical practitioner that I really truly trust.
I can understand that.
Right now, I don't know any that I really, really trust to look into this with.
Well, surely if the government had anything to do with knowing about people who go in and they do find, I've heard of cases where they have found instruments in people's bodies, and I would have to imagine that instantly, like any UFO crash, the government quickly would get on that and, you know, hide it. Cover it up.
Mhm. Yeah, so. I think so. So, yeah, I'd like to look at it, but again, I need to work with a doctor that I trust to do that. And right now, I just don't know any doctors that I trust enough to get into that with.
Well, I can understand that completely. Would you mind quickly if we went to the phone lines and took a call? I have somebody who has a question.
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
Okay, great. So 570 area code, you are on late night in the Midlands.
Get the fuck out here, boy.
Hello? Never mind, we're going to do away with that one.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that was not good. Nice job, screener. Okay, so never mind. We'll skip that. Apparently, they weren't ready to get on, and now they're not going to. So anyhow, let's move along here. That was a little distracting. Sorry about that. How crucial has hypnosis been for you? And do you recommend this to anyone who has experienced lost time or feeling like they've been abducted?
Yeah, I do recommend it with the caveat that, again, find someone that you really feel good about working with, someone that you really feel that you can trust. Trust is a really important issue. If you're going to surrender control of yourself to someone who's going to hypnotize you, trust is really an important factor. And it's a good way of looking at it when you're working with a skilled hypnotherapist. They know how to relax you and put you into a state where you can access your memories. And the process is, oftentimes in my experience it was a pretty gentle process. The only thing that was difficult for me was reliving to an extent some of the things that happened to me. And in my hypnosis sessions, there's labored breathing and tension and stress that you can hear in my voice because at some level I am reliving what's happened to me. And that's difficult. But even still, if you're with a good hypnotherapist, they can help to mitigate that during the session by giving you suggestions to relax, to watch as an observer, and, take other steps to try to decrease your discomfort.
Okay. What were the effects of the injection they forced on you? Have you had any kind of side effects that you've noticed because of that?
Well, I do wonder about certain things that might be repercussions of that. I do have some physical issues now that are kind of problematic. I actually live with managing a fair level of pain a lot of the time. Back pain, carpal tunnel in both hands. And I sometimes wonder, if some of that is related to the past. I've done some herbal cleanses down through the years that I'm hoping have cleansed out any remaining toxins from the injections. And I don't really know what the injections were for. I just know that when they injected me in the side of the neck, the chemical went straight up to the brain. I could feel it shoot right up in there. And it caused a terrible, terrible shaking in my body. Such violent shaking that I felt like I might shake apart. And it was extremely unpleasant and very, very frightening. It's very frightening to have somebody stick something in your body that that you don't even know what it is, and then to have such a terrible reaction.
I imagine it's got to be terrifying, and I mean that really takes me back to some of these vaccines they come up with, and I strongly believe that a lot of times they put test stuff, serums, whatever you want to call it, in those.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't trust whatever they're putting in anything these days. I'm a very big student of healthy eating and healthy lifestyle. I eat organic. I would say 75% of the time I prepare all my food from scratch, so I know exactly what's in it. Drink plenty of clean water, and keep processed food to an absolute minimum. And I don't have vaccines. I refuse. I think I'm taking really good care of my immune system, and I trust my immune system to do its job as long as I'm taking good care of it.
I share them thoughts with you 100%. I don't do the vaccines either. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. I'm not putting anything in my body that they say will help me, because it'll do just the opposite in most cases.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are catching on to that, and a lot of people are not going to submit to that anymore. I think that after the swine flu hoax, and all the stuff that came out about that, they're going to find that the world population is going to be a lot more resistant to things of that nature coming out and being pushed on them again.
Oh, yeah, you know, it's funny. It's not funny, but as a figure of speech, it's funny how, you know, vaccines they had many years ago, they find out later that all these side effects that it's had on people and the health problems that it's caused. And that's why I don't know how people could even come close to trusting them. When you look at the past and the evidence of the past of what they've done, you know, oh, it's safe, go ahead, it's going to help you. And then, you know, 10 years later, they're having heart problems or they're having seizures and things of that nature.
Yeah, well, it's not even just vaccines. When I was pregnant with my daughter, I took a medication for morning sickness called Bendectin, and they don't give that to expectant mothers anymore. But I took it for quite a while because I had pretty bad morning sickness with her. And now I wonder, you know, what effect did that have? Did it leave her with any lasting effects or damage? You know, she seems okay these days, but, you know, I still wonder about that. And then my son was given Ritalin when he was in his dad's care. You know, his dad was one of those ones he didn't question so much. If the doctor said that he needed it, my son got it. And so they put him on Ritalin for a time, and I was not happy about it. I tried to get it stopped, but they had custody at that time, and I couldn't make them stop giving it to him.
I share that with you as well, because I'm going through actually the same thing right now myself. When my son is being put on medications and stuff that I really don't feel he needs, and it seems like when you don't have the custody, you just don't have a big say in it, and I don't like it at all, but there's not much I can do about it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, I hope my kids are okay, and I hope that if there have been any effects from some of those drugs, that they're going to find their way out of the body eventually.
No, I sure hope so. Can we talk a little about the air missile radar test on extraterrestrial spacecraft? Now, what exactly was that? I mean, what were they trying to gain by this?
Well, I'm not really sure. From my point of view, I was a little irritated at being dragged out in the middle of the night and put under such frightening conditions to test the radar on something that obviously the radar couldn't track. But if you look back from different viewpoints, you know, like the viewpoint of the craft and other things, they may have actually gathered some good data that evening about that maybe the craft themselves could tell when they were being tracked and then just moved very quickly to a different part of the sky and break the radar lock. And that may have been the data they were trying to retrieve. So I don't know all the particulars of that. For us on the ground operating the radar, it seemed ridiculous to think that a radar that moves around 360 degrees mechanically could have any chance in hell of tracking something that could appear, you know, one part of the sky over here, and then in less than the blink of an eye be all the way across the sky and the other horizon. So there's no way that a mechanical radar can whip around that fast, you know, to follow something like that. And besides, it wasn't even able to keep a lock on it. You know, as soon as there was a radar lock at all, it was immediately broken because the craft would move so quickly. You know, literally disappear in one spot and then appear someplace else.
Do you suppose that's why partly why they keep this secret is because they think people wouldn't like the idea that there's something out there that our military couldn't touch?
Well, I think that may have been true back in the 40s and 50s, but I don't think it's true anymore. We've had generations of kids, myself included, brought up with E.T. movies and Star Trek and Stargate SG-1 and so many different science fiction series and films that deal with ETs. But I think that ETs have become part of our popular culture, and I just don't think that the fear card stands up anymore.
What did these UFOs look like? Were there different types, or were most of them pretty standard, which I'm sure that there was many different kinds. I've heard of the cigar shape, the disc shape. So, yeah, what did they look like?
The ones I saw out on the desert that night were disc-shaped. All of them were pretty much disc-shaped. So, and then again, that closest one to me, definitely disc-shaped and glowing orange on the bottom.
Amazing.
It was like a skin. It was like a metal skin on the bottom where you could see the orange glowing from inside.
Okay. Now, I know at one time, at least I believe, you refused to do more interviews. So I'd have to ask, why did you agree to this one and other ones recently?
Well, before, when I did the Dreamland documentary, they were supposed to hide my identity, and they did a really bad job hiding my identity. Anybody who knew me knew that was me. And the whole point for me was to have my identity hidden because I was still really scared back then that somebody was going to come and shut me up.
Right.
And so when that documentary aired, and even when it aired years later, people came up and said, "Was that you on that UFO show last night?" And I have to kind of say, yeah, it was, because it was real obvious that it was me. I didn't want to do any more interviews because I felt like I had been so badly exploited by not having my identity sufficiently hidden. I just didn't want anything more to do with the media for a long time. But 8 years of the Bush-Cheney administration, which I consider the most public face of the shadow government we've ever had in office, and then the abridgment and disintegration of our Constitution, I just thought maybe it's going to take everybody who has some testimony to offer to step forward and tell their story so that we don't have this abuse of power in the White House anymore. And so that's one of the reasons why I came forward. I just felt like it was really important. And like every other member of the military, I took an oath to defend the United States and its Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Presidents and senators and peace officers and all military take that oath. And I think it's really time that anybody who takes that oath think about it and step up to the plate and do what's right to defend our Constitution. Because an administration that begins to dismantle and undermine the very Constitution that it swore an oath to protect is a domestic enemy of our country and our Constitution. And so by speaking up now and starting to do interviews now and being out in the open now, to me, I'm trying to do my part to defend the United States and its Constitution and its people.
Well, I thank you for that.
Yeah. So it's just really important. It's really important to do this. I mean, if we want the kind of world that's peaceful and sustainable, hopefully with free energy and clean and a nice place for everybody to live, then we, the people, have to step up to the plate and make that happen.
I couldn't agree with you more. And one last question is, why do you now consider this experience a gift?
Because it's awakened me at such profound levels. If I look back at an alternate timeline where I never looked into these experiences never opened up to them, and just kind of went through life. The me that I see in that alternate timeline is kind of an automaton, just kind of going through the motions of life and not really being awake the way I am today. The process of going through the trauma, while it was not fun, and it really wasn't even fun to tell about it on the show tonight. I started experiencing a little shaking just talking about it. But the healing process of moving through it, the places that I've had to look, the research that I've had to do, the process of feeling all the feelings and allowing the energy cycle of the feelings to complete, to clear the energy of the trauma out of the body, has awakened me at such profound levels. And moving beyond the fear of my experiences, to even be able to be on the radio with you tonight, to speak at the UFO Congress as I recently did, and do the other interviews that I'm doing, I had to move through a tremendous amount of fear to be able to even do this. And as I move beyond the fear, that's when I feel like my consciousness began to light up, and my expanded abilities began to come online. And I feel alive, awake, and aware today in a way that I don't think I could ever have had if I had not gone through these experiences and gone through the healing process. It's like a shamanic process. Have you heard about like a Native American initiation where a warrior will allow himself to be bitten by a rattlesnake, and then he has to change the poison to water in his body so it doesn't hurt him?
Yes, I have heard of that.
Yeah, these experiences are the same kind of thing. It's like being bitten with something that leaves a poison inside of you. And you can let that poison slowly kill you over time by hanging on to impotent rage and anger and grief, or you can let those feelings go, you can move through them, you can heal, and then you change the poison, you transmute it to something else. And in my case, transmuting that poison has brought me these gifts of awakening and awareness and increasingly expanding abilities. And so that's why today I'm grateful for every part of my experience because of who I've become today. It's very special. And I just hope that it's a shamanic awakening for me, that I can help the world that I'm part of to also awaken, to also open to these expanded abilities and become everything that we can be as human beings.
Well, Niara, I really do thank you for sharing your experiences with us tonight on Late Night in the Midlands, and I thank you so much for your service to this country and your willingness to get awareness out there to the other people on this planet. And it has really been a pleasure speaking with you tonight. And you're more than welcome to go ahead and give out website links or article links or any other links you want to give out before we call this a conclusion.
Okay. Well, I have my blog, Durango Exopolitics. It's easy to find with a Google search. And then I also have another blog that I started called Encounters with Healing. And that one is to explore a little bit more of the consciousness aspect and the healing aspect of things, and try to help people move beyond fear. So that blog, again, is called encounterswithhealing.wordpress.com. And I haven't done any writing for the Denver Examiner as the Denver Extraterrestrial Contact Examiner in a while. I hope to get back to it. But again, the book is taking a lot of time right now. And my time at the computer is a little limited because of back pain. So I'm doing the best I can with that. But if there is anybody that really wants to do some in-depth one-on-one work with moving beyond fear, or any other way in which they feel I might be able to help, they can contact me through the Encounters with Healing WordPress blog, and we can look at what I can do for them if they would like that.
Okay, great. And you'll have to let me know when your book is ready to get out there so I can scoop up a copy.
Oh, sure. I'm going to let everybody know when the book is ready, and I'm going to try to have a virtual book launch party via Skype, where I'll just be on Skype for about 3 hours on kind of a conference thing, and people can pop in or off as they want to, and maybe order copies of the book on Amazon, and we'll just have a party online.
Oh. Okay, and what I do for my guests is at some point this weekend we'll get your links up to your articles and such. And when your book gets out there, I'd be more than happy to get a link up for that as well.
Okay, well, I thank you very much. I really appreciate that, because I'm hoping that book sales will help me realize my dream of getting a motorhome. I want to get a really nice motorhome and be able to flee south for the winter and get out of the snow. So that's kind of a dream. I'm really looking forward to having a motorhome and being able to get out of the snow for the winter.
Well, I hope that dream becomes a reality for you, and I'm sure it will, as you seem like a very honorable person, and I do appreciate so much you taking the time out to be on Late Night in the Midlands tonight.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me on. I've really enjoyed being here with you and having this wonderful talk and discussion. I really appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and you have a Please welcome Niara Isley. Good evening.
Hi, Mike. Thanks
Hi,
for having
how are
me.
you? Oh,
I'm
thank
good.
you so much for joining us. I'm really I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and sharing this story with me and my listeners, for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be here, and I hope we have a great time talking tonight.
Yeah, I think we will. I really do. This show, I mean, we cover a lot of strange occurrences, and this is one that I definitely have not really touched on too deeply, and really happy to get into it tonight. So, Niara, let's start with your books. Was it difficult writing them based on your experiences, and where can my listeners buy these books?
Well, I only have one book, and it's still in work. So it's not published yet. I'm still working on it, and it is very difficult to write. And just a little correction there on the name. The name is Niara.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that.
Iris. No, that's okay. That's okay. So anyway, it's Niara, and the book is called Facing the Shadow, Embracing the Light. And one of the things that's been so difficult about getting it done is the experience section was very, very hard to write, because you had to go back and read my transcripts and listen to my tapes and essentially kind of relive all the trauma over again in order to write it effectively. So it has been very difficult to write, and I'm still working on it, but that pesky experience section is almost done, and everything else should go more smoothly. I'm hoping to have the book done by June.
Well, good, and I'll make sure that I get myself a copy of one of those books, because I find your story fascinating. I've read plenty of your articles that you have out, and I've even gone over some of the interviews that you've done, and really fascinating story. And that's why I had you on tonight, because I think people need to know that, this isn't just a story. This is real life.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I try to take a practical. The first one was I was about 4 years old, and I woke up one night screaming, just screaming, because I was terrified. And I'm not a person who's prone to waking up in that kind of an emotional state. Never have been. And so I woke up screaming, which was very unusual for me. And the dream that I'd had that had scared me so badly was of my sister and two friends who I couldn't see who the friends were.
Okay.
I just knew she was with two friends. And they took me out of the house in the night, and then they left me alone under a street lamp, and just out on a dark street. And my sister says, "Wait here until I come back and get you." Well, I waited and waited and waited under this street lamp, and outside it was like surrealistic. And outside where the light was touching was pitch black. So the only place you could see was that little circle of light that the street lamp was making. Everything else was pitch black. I couldn't see into it. And I waited and waited and waited there, and she didn't come back. And finally I was so scared I just started screaming and then woke up. And it was pretty vivid. It's, I'm 55 years old today, and it's still just as vivid for me. And so that was one of the memories one of the things I wanted to look at when I had my first hypnosis session, and that was with Bud Hopkins in 1994. And when we looked at it, it was an ET abduction, and I said something kind of striking when I was under hypnosis. I said, "Well, it's night, and I'm in my bedroom, and I'm supposed to be sleeping, but it's funny because it's nighttime, but the bedroom is full of light from the window. It's like as light as daytime." That was one of the things that I said under hypnosis. So definitely something was happening. And
yeah, because there's those dreams that are, you just know despite it being a dream kind of atmosphere, you just know that there was more to it than just a dream. Yeah. So you think you were... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, there was another situation when I was 9 years old where I woke up with a pain behind my right ear, and this is really strange. I reached behind my right ear, and there's a bump back there, and it's still there today. And I remember feeling the bump and immediately feeling like really scared. I thought, well, gosh, what's this bump? Do I have cancer or something? Am I going to die? And I was really scared about it. And then it was like suddenly the fear was gone, and I forgot all about the bump as if it had never been there. And then if I felt it again, I thought it was part of the natural bone. And it was like two memories kind of lived side by side for many years. This one of thinking it was just part of the natural bone, and then underneath there was something else. And then when I saw the movie Fire in the Sky, there was the face of an owl flashed on the screen for a minute, it seemed like. And when the face of the owl went on the screen, immediately the real memory of the pain and the fear about the bump came back. So that was another unusual situation.
Now, had you ever gotten it checked out to find out what it was, like maybe an implant or something along those lines?
No, I haven't. I'm not real comfortable with doctors, I guess, as many
I don't blame you.
experiences are. So I might have Roger Lear take a look at it someday.
Yeah.
So
now do you think you had some kind of contact as a child too, though?
Yeah.
So does this still go on? Do you still feel like this is something that's happening, or?
Yeah, well, I do feel like I'm still having contact, but with a different group of ETs now. There's many times when I'll be asleep. I'll be sleeping. I'll wake up in the morning at that magical 3 to 3:30 hour in the morning. So many people wake up from a contact. And many nights now I see what I call light ships out the bedroom window as I'm laying down to go to sleep. I'll see them out there kind of flashing and blinking at me in different colors. Well, I don't know. It seems like it's kind of always been there, even as a kid, you know, kind of lurking in the background, because so many strange things happened to me as a kid that then kind of rattled around later in life. And my dad, interestingly enough, he never really mentioned UFOs to me, but he did hand me, when I was a teenager, Eric von Daniken's books, the Chariots of the Gods books. I think there were 3 of them. And he handed those to me, and he says, I really think you need to read these. He was pretty insistent that I read those. And so I know he was looking into the subject, and I've come to believe now that he was an abductee as well, because it runs in families. And another thing I've noticed in my research is that a lot of people that are abducted or have experiences also have Native American blood, and I did get Cherokee from my father's side of the family.
Why do you suppose that is?
Well, I've come up with 2 reasons.
Okay.
One is a lot of Native Americans are located in remote areas out on reservations, and if there is any truth to the story that our military met with ETs and exchanged technology from the ETs, and then gave them permission to run a limited abduction program, they might have said, why don't you focus on the Native American population, because they're out in all these remote areas mostly anyway, and that way it could be done more covertly.
Yeah, and I've heard quite a bit about the government actually making that agreement. I always wondered about that. You know, boy, if we ever could get some proof on something like that.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that are researching it pretty carefully. And then the other idea is that maybe Native Americans just have superior genetics, and the ETs like them because our genetics are so good.
Yeah, and they seem more connected with the environment and so on, you know, a lot more than us who use computers and cell phones and all that every day.
Right.
So you had some strange dreams as a child. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Feet on the ground sort of approach to spirituality, as well as the more etheric kinds of things. I'm really interested in trying to help people understand a spirituality that really works for them in their everyday life, something they can really apply. So go ahead.
When did you realize this disturbing 3-month block of missing time? And what were your first thoughts on it all in the very beginning?
I think it was back in late 1993 or early 1994. I was talking with a friend of mine named Dirk, and we'd been having all kinds of discussions about UFOs and ETs and spirituality and different aspects of, you know, metaphysics. And he knew that I had been in the Air Force, but for some reason I kept kind of dodging away from the topic in our conversations. And he thought, well, that's weird because she's so open and talks so openly about every other aspect of her experience. And so he sat me down one afternoon. He says, tell me about your Air Force time from beginning to end. And I said, sure. And so I started telling him about everything, Lackland Air Force Base for boot camp, technical training school at Keesler Air Force Base. And then I got to my first duty station, which was Nellis Air Force Base, and suddenly I kind of got brought up short because I couldn't remember anything except really general memories. Like I could tell you where I worked and what I did, but I couldn't tell you any particulars about like people I worked with or what my workplace looked like. You know, things that normal people would remember about where they worked. And this, my memory seemed to drop off in January of 1980, and then it kind of picked up and got more normal again around March or April of 1980. So there was like 3 months there where I couldn't really remember what was up, and I also got a wave of nausea. When I realized I couldn't remember that time period, I got really scared and I felt sick to my stomach.
Now, alien abduction was probably the furthest thing from your mind in the very beginning, or was it?